preached cannibalism. So we have an actual earlier Christian liturgy called the Didache, which doesn't have any of this and simply talks about drinking and eating without any reference to flesh and blood.
Well, first of all, the Didache is not dated by most scholars to 50 AD. It's actually dated towards the end of the 1st century AD or the beginning of the 2nd century
Wikipedia,
AD.
it does say that.
Well, most scholars date it towards the end of the 1st century, beginning of
The Wikipedia article states that it quotes
furthermore,
scholars
that's
saying,
irrelevant. It's actually better if it's dated earlier, because in the Didache, the Eucharist is referred to as a sacrifice, and it's points back to the prophecy of Malachi.
Sacrifice of what?
A sacrifice of praise. Yeah.
Exactly.
I know.
It's not a human sacrifice, it's a sacrifice of praise. This is a metaphor which Christians, particularly the Catholic tradition, has taken in a literal cannibalistic sense. Catholics actually believe that when they eat the body and blood, the bread and the wine, is literally the flesh of a human being, and they're drinking the actual blood of a human being. This, of course, to a Jew like Jesus and the apostles would have been disgusting and repellent and abomination. So Jesus didn't declare all foods clean.
The Gospel of Mark says that he did.
No, it does. The Gospel. Jesus doesn't say that.
The Gospel of Mark says it, which is inspired by God.
Well, does Mark claim to be inspired?
It doesn't have to claim to be inspired.
Well, how do you know it's inspired then?
Because the Church has confirmed that it is inspired.
Right.
And the Church was founded by Jesus Christ.
Right. Okay. With lots of assumptions there. The Bible nowhere claims to be inspired by God, by the way. And there are many different books. There are books in the early Church that were inspired, accepted by your Church, which you now reject. For example, the Shepherd of Hermes and the Didache, which is in the Codex Sinaiticus. And the Epistle of Barnabas.
Epistle of Barnabas.
So the canon keeps on changing, but the books themselves don't claim, and indeed other writers don't think they're inspired. Matthew did not think, for example, Mark was inspired, because he alters, corrects, and changes Mark when he disagrees with him. So Matthew is not seen by inspired by the author of Matthew's Gospel.
Well, I'm using inspired in the sense that modern people use inspired. I know that the writings of the Apostolic Fathers were referred to as inspired or God-breathed, Theopneustos, but that word did not necessarily have the same connotation that it does today. And the Catholic Church authoritatively defined the books of the Old and New Testament in the 4th century AD in multiple councils which were accepted by the Pope.
No, it didn't. The only time the Catholic Church in a council defined these books was the Council of Trent.
That was when it infallibly defined these books as belonging to the canon.
That's the only time the Catholic Church in Ecumenical Council ever defined those books. 1,400 years
That's the only
after
Ecumenical
the birth of
Council,
Jesus.
but there were regional councils.
Regional councils.
Hippo, Rome, and Carthage in the 4th century.
But
they were accepted by the Pope.
Doesn't that make them infallible, though?
No, well,
it makes them authoritative.
Anyway, so come back to the idea. Mark, for example, is not seen as inspired by God by early church writers like Matthew, because he corrects and embellishes, and therefore he could not have seen it as inspired. For example, you say in Mark chapter 7, there's a verse that says, which is not from Jesus, from Mark, thus he declared all foods clean. That's what you quoted from. Not the words of Jesus, by the way. But Matthew, when he used Mark in the writing of his Gospel, a theory accepted by the Catholic Church, deleted that verse because he disagreed with it. He didn't think.
That's an assumption.
Well, why did Matthew delete that verse?
Who knows?
Well, speculate. Use your intelligence.
Perhaps because he was trying to convey some other message.
What is Matthew's general tendency vis-a-vis the law and Jesus in the whole of the Gospel? How does he approach the law?
Matthew is the most Jewish of the Gospels.
So how does he approach the law? Torah.
Believes that it's been fulfilled by Jesus Christ.
Right. Does he think it's still binding on the disciples of Jesus in Matthew?
He believes that it's been fulfilled by Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but that wasn't my question. Does he still think it's binding on the disciples of Jesus in Matthew's Gospel?
I just answered your question.
No, you didn't say fulfillment. Is it still binding? Do they still have to obey it? Can you unpack your answer a bit? Do they still have to obey it?
It is not necessary for a Christian to follow the law.
I didn't ask. Okay, that may be true in your view. I'm asking about the Gospel of Matthew specifically.
I'm telling you right now, the view of the Gospel of Matthew is that the law has been fulfilled by Jesus Christ.
Okay, is it still okay? So you're not going to expand what that means by fulfilled? Do the disciples of Jesus have to obey the individual commandments of the Torah in Matthew's Gospel?
Yes, to follow the 10 Commandments and the law of God.
All of the commandments, 600.